Good afternoon, all. We are a small but mighty group today, which doesn't surprise me in December. If you would, just drop your name in the chat and let us know who all is here. I do not think we will be here the entire hour today, but you never know what questions might come up. Jenny, as soon as this is done, I have a note to be able to call you, so don't stress out. I haven't forgotten you. You are on my to-do list today. I am going to drop the link in the chat for our agenda. And let's see. Let me put that bit.ly there. That makes it a little bit easier to type in if you're not able to click. There we go. All right, well, it is just me today, so you might have to bear with me just a little bit. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Melissa Algrim. I'm the Director of Reading Sufficiency. I usually am joined by some of my colleagues, but just like all of you, things are just a hopping up here, and people had some different meetings that they needed to be at as well. So I think we'll be just fine, but do keep that in mind. If I don't answer something in the chat right away, I'm kind of being all of the eyes and ears as we move on today. Let me share my screen. It makes that just a little bit easier. If I can, there we go. Share that, and we'll move that over there. You don't need that. Okay, hopefully you should be able to see the agenda. Can someone give me just a confirmation that you can? You can even unmute to do that if you need to. Thank you, Michelle. Saw the thumbs up. All right, so we do have a short agenda today. Like I said, that's fine. I know we've just got a lot. We're kind of in the middle of a whole bunch of things, but it's I did not want to cancel 2 months in a row by any means. I know we've got things that people would like some information about, and certainly don't want you to think I've forgotten about all you lovely people out there. First of all, Science of Reading Academies. Let me talk about that just a little bit. For those of you that are aware, we are using $13 million from the American Recovery Plan, federal dollars, for the Science of Reading Academies to be able to offer Letters 3rd edition to any public school Oklahoma educator that would like to participate in that. I'm looking across the people on our call, and I see several people that are involved. And I see some that are district administrators that have been encouraging a lot of their districts or district teachers to be able to participate. While this is focused on kindergarten through 3rd grade teachers, it is applicable really for any teacher that does anything with reading instruction. It's extremely appropriate for special education, interventionists. We have several paraprofessionals that are going through, especially those that are considering going into becoming a certified teacher at some point. We have several administrators that are also going through just because they want to be able to know what to look for, to be able to make good purchasing decisions as they move forward with walkthroughs and evaluations. We have cohort 1 that is currently underway. They did their first training about a month ago. Cohort 2 registration is open at this point in time, and it will be open until January 5th. And then we will have 2 other cohorts. Cohort 3 will open in August 2022, or will begin working. And cohort 4, the last cohort, will begin in January of 2023. We do have to have all of these funds spent and encumbered by December of 2024. So cohort 4 will be the last opportunity to participate. I put a couple of links here that might be helpful for you. One is a few months ago, OSDE did a short video on the Science of Reading Academies and what all is involved with that. So this might be something that's helpful, especially if you have some teachers that are sitting on the fence, or you just are now hearing about it and would like to know a little bit more. Also, in this last month, Voyager Sopris, which is the vendor providing the curriculum for the academies, did a podcast with Enid Public Schools and their curriculum director, Kristen Jones, about their use of letters. They had actually gone through 170 teachers in Enid. Most of their teachers went through letters just prior to us starting the academies. And they are seeing some tremendous growth in Enid as a result of just having the common knowledge, having that mission going, everybody's going in the same direction, and then some curriculum changes that they made to accompany what they had been learning, that they're being able to see some of that growth happening in the district when everyone's on the same page. So that might be as you're in the kitchen cooking over the next month, or out shopping, driving from store to store, finishing up that Christmas shopping or wrapping gifts, just something to listen to and kind of learn some new things. Okay. All right. More information, you can go to the Science of Reading webpage. It's just sde.ok.gov/Science of Reading, all one word. We recently updated this webpage so you can find out a little bit more of what letters is and is not. Like I said, we're in the middle of registration for cohort 2, so you can find that direct link. And then we have a page for each of our cohorts. So for example, those that are already in cohort 1, it gives them a calendar for all of their facilitated sessions. You'll see we have a lot of groups going through for cohort 1. So it's a lot to manage. Megan Ashbaugh, my colleague that is running that, does a fabulous job of keeping all that together. Okay. All right, so I'm going to double check in the chat. Like I said, it is just me here. So let me see if we had any questions just specifically about our academies. Let's see here. All right, I don't see anything there. Yeah, I do see another question, and I'll get that taken care of. I want to kind of stay on track with our agenda first, and then I'll get to that one. Okay, RSA allocation. I know many of you are chomping at the bit. Where is the money so that we can do some things? That is currently with state aid. We saw a couple of errors in the data that we had to be corrected. So it means we had to call the district, have them to make the corrections, get it certified, and back to state aid. Because we want to make sure that this goes out correctly. We certainly don't want anybody having to pay back things. That's certainly no fun. But we will have that. We anticipate that full payout going to districts by mid-December. So we should be seeing that. But like I said, they are working on that. I know about where things are, but I want to make sure that we have an accurate number before I release any of that information, since state aid is still working on that. And we go through multiple checks and balances to make sure we're sitting at the right amount. Okay. For those of you that are not as familiar with RSA and how this works, remember that this is money that is paid out and put into your account as the bank. You will use those OMES codes, or sorry, OCAS codes. You can tell us, I'm ready for a holiday. You can use the OCAS codes. That's how we will check to see if it's allowable spending or not. This is not something you send in claims for. So you have this funding, it's yours to spend, but remember what that purpose is. And we went over this in October, but I just put this on the running agenda again, so it's right there where you can find it. Those things that you can spend RSA funding for. Remember that the purpose is to support reading instruction in grades K through 3, and for 4th and 5th grade students who still fall under those RSA requirements because they've been promoted with probation or with a good cause exemption and still need that assistance. Also remember that starting next school year, not this year, but starting next school year, there was a new bill that was passed and signed into law by the governor that forced districts that receive more than $2,500 in RSA funding, that at least 10% of that should be spent on professional development. We are working on a list for that. So the way that we are looking at that, for that release for information, request for information to go out so that we can develop that list for you. Could it mean just straight knowledge for teachers, something like going through letters, or something else that is along those lines, like Payne Education Center, AIM Pathways, core learning. There's a lot of those things out there. It could be professional development over how to use a curriculum aligned with the science of reading, or a supplemental intervention resource aligned with the science of reading, or that cognitive science, to help students learn how to become better readers. It can also include stipends for attending those. It doesn't mean that you have to send your entire staff, because obviously if you're on that low end of that threshold and you are getting $2,500, $250 would be 10%, but it might be enough to send one teacher to go learn something. Maybe your reading specialist, an interventionist, maybe you just want to work on your kindergarten teacher staff. And then even have them come back and work some. So we'll have some more guidance for that as next year comes closer, but just start kind of keeping that in the back of your mind, that requirement will be in place. So, all right, let's see. I don't see anything else in the chat there, but just kind of keep in mind as that's coming out. The other questions come up a couple of times. Keep in mind that with the RSA funding, once it's given to you, it's yours. We don't take it back at the end of the year. I've had a lot of districts think that they have to spend it or they lose it at the end of this year. That's not the case. You can carry this over to the next year. It makes sense that you would keep some carried over to the fall, because we don't get this allocation until later, because we have a statutory requirement that all of those plans have to be approved and all of the beginning of year reports have to be turned in. So when you're dealing with 920 elementary schools, that takes a little bit of time. So being able to get that out earlier is physically not possible, but it is okay to carry some of that funding over to the fall. So for example, if you're using this funding to pay for your screening assessment that you need to buy in the fall, that's fine. If you're needing to get interventionists in the fall because we don't obviously want to wait until January to get that started. So it seems that there was some misunderstanding with some districts there, that had to be spent, or it was gone. We aren't going into your account and taking anything back, I promise, at least not for RSA. Can't speak to anything else. And you can carry some of it over. Now, what we don't want to see are districts stockpiling multiple years worth, because we do want to spend that funding for the students who are in need. So just kind of keep that in mind, but it would make sense that we would see some carryover so that you have some funds available for you in the fall to take care of those obligations. All right. Dyslexia guidance. I know that this is a question that often comes up, is what's going on with our dyslexia screening that will be required starting next year. There is a dyslexia work group that includes administrators, school psychologists, special education teachers, general education teachers, parents. And it did meet yesterday. Guidance documents are currently in development. They were kind of starting to look at those documents to see what is it that needs to happen to make sure that we have as smooth a rollout of this as possible. So speaking to that, as we are looking at some of this guidance documents, I know I have received many questions. Michelle DeBerry in special education has received many questions. One of the first questions that we received is, where is this requirement living? Is it living in RSA? In the RSA office, or is it living in the special education office? And so we had to have some conversation up here about that as well. At this point in time, it is the requirements for the screening, the guidance, that type of thing, because that is a general education initiative. Excuse me, I've got something in my throat. That is living in the RSA office with close collaboration with special education. Any requirements for dyslexia professional development, updating the dyslexia handbook, or identification for special education, that is living in a special ed office, but with close collaboration with us as well. So as far as you're concerned, if you have questions about this, you can call either one of us and we'll be able to help you out with that. But just so you know, kind of where's the final, where do we really need to think about that? That would be for the screening. Anything dealing with in the gen ed classroom would be in the RSA office. Everything else would be in the special ed office. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. But in order to really make sure that we are getting the most helpful guidance possible, I would like us to take just a moment to do a quick Jamboard activity. If you have that capability, I'm going to put this link in the chat so that makes it a little bit easier to access. If I can, I've got to move this screen out of the way. Hang on. There we go. If you could go ahead and go to that link, and I'm also going to show you on my screen, you'll see some people coming in. If you've never done Jamboard before, it's just basically a board that we can stick Post-it notes on. And you'll see over here on the side, you'll see these Post-its, a sticky note. I can click on here and I will, I can have a sticky note here that I can just write anything on, and I can click save and it goes and saves up here. Okay, now obviously I don't want to keep that. What would help us is, as you are thinking about questions you might have about the dyslexia screening, we would love to see some of those questions out here so that we can make sure that we are addressing anything we can in those guidance documents. So I've got a couple of different boards here. The first page would be about administering the dyslexia screening. Maybe you're wondering who is allowed to do this, or which students does this apply to. You can see up here at the top, you can switch to another board. You might have questions about how are you going to use the data from that dyslexia screening. A couple of instances that we've already heard about would be, hey, we're going to use one vendor for our RSA screener and a different vendor for the dyslexia screener, and how do we make that merge? So, those types of things. Or maybe we just want to know which types of scores should we use. Another group of questions might be about communicating with parents about dyslexia. We know we have some communication requirements. Do you have any questions that we need to really think about? Some of those sticky questions about how we're going to communicate with parents. And do you have any questions about how we are reporting data from that dyslexia screening? There are some reporting requirements in that bill that was passed. We are trying to incorporate all of those into existing RSA reports so that we're not starting a new report. We're just maybe adding a couple of questions. So hopefully that will help out. But if you have any questions about that, and then just any other additional questions that maybe I didn't think of a bucket for, okay? So if I'm just gonna stop talking for a moment, okay? And if you have any questions about dyslexia or that screening, just give you a moment to maybe add any Post-it notes that you might. Remember, you can add Post-it notes just by clicking this icon over to the side. Looks like a sticky note. As far as the one that I do see, I mean, Renaissance Star has an assessment, new one called Star CBM, that is considered a dyslexia screener. Okay, so early literacy and Star reading would be for RSA, and then the Star CBM would be the dyslexia screener. And I'm not going to try to answer all these questions right now. What I want to make sure is that we're going to address the questions in the guidance document so that we have that in writing there for you. So I'm going to give you just a few more minutes to kind of add any other questions. I see a few coming up. That is always helpful to have those. I don't care how much we think about potential questions when we're writing guidance, there will always be some of those situations that we did not think about. And sometimes we just don't think about it until it happens. So but anything, I know those of you that are already fielding questions from teachers or trying to figure out in your own district how this might look, that will really be helpful so that we can make sure that we have some consistent answers for you. All right, great. And you'll have this link if you want to even add a few more questions a little bit later. Perfect. Go ahead and add those questions. The more that we have to start with, the more comprehensive that guidance will be, and the better we will be able to help you out as we get moving forward. We'll be able to think through some of that. The only other thing I wanted to make sure of, I always try to tell you about some professional development opportunities coming up. And right now, this month, I don't know a lot going on in the next couple of weeks. I think everybody's just trying to make it through to the holidays and get some very much needed rest. But I do know that AIM Institute out of Pennsylvania has having their 9th annual Research to Practice Symposium. This is something they offer every year. It's one day, it's in March, on March 15th. It's a full day, but if you register, you do get the recording to watch at a later time. So you don't have to worry about trying to get a sub or trying to do something around thing, but they always have some very good speakers. It is a free opportunity. This year, they're focusing a lot on early identification and its implications for school-based interventions. So if you have followed any of the research that comes out about reading, you are going to see some really big names here that will be available. Dr. Hugh Katz out of Florida State University. If you're familiar with the Florida Center for Reading Research, Hugh Katz is instrumental there in helping that out. Nadine Gabb is out of Harvard, and she has what we call the Gabb Lab. She has been developing multiple interventions. She has done a lot of the different brain research for identifying students that are struggling as early as 3 and 4 years old. And she has recently developed a screening assessment called Early Birds that they just completed their studies on, that I'm ready to look at and see if that would be a good possibility for some of us for identifying reading difficulties. So she has a lot of really good information and is easy to listen to. Famiko Hooft is another researcher that really does a lot with brain imaging and neuroscience. And then Yakov Petcher, again, with the Florida Center for Reading Research, does a lot with the interventions, assessment, how students learn to read. So this really is an all-star lineup that would be really interesting to listen to if you have the opportunity, either on March 15th or listening to a recording at a later time. All right. Okay, so as I'm coming back, wanted to double check for this. Okay, one question that came just to me directly is if a student meets that grade level target, even at the middle of the year, can they come off of that IPRI? Or do they need to wait until they meet the end of year target? That really is going to be a district decision. I know you hate it when I say that. However, the end of year target is the one that's defined and required for 3rd grade for promotion retention decisions. In other words, if I have a student who meets or exceeds that end of year target for 3rd grade at any time, then they are eligible for promotion. Okay. But as far as if we have a student that meets that grade level target for for reading intervention, then as a team, you're deciding, do they come off of the intervention or not? A couple of things to think about. If the target is here and the student is right here, I mean, they're just barely above that target, and especially if that's an unusual score for them, what you might want to do is keep them on, but monitor them again, like maybe in 2 or 3 weeks to see if that is still there. You can take them off. There's nothing in law saying you can't. It's fine. What we don't want to do is have them off, on, off, on, off, on all the time, especially if they're kind of bouncing around that target. Probably the best thing to think about is that student is being successful with intervention. So if they are getting to that point, what you might consider is stepping them off of the intervention. So maybe less intensity. If they are getting this intervention 5 days a week, and they've got to that score, maybe you want to step them down to see how are they doing after 3 days a week. Or maybe they're in a little bit larger group. Maybe instead of 30 minutes, they're going for 20 minutes, depending on what the requirements of that intervention would be. If it's something that takes 30 minutes to complete, you don't want to take away time and not do a full intervention. You'd rather maybe do it with less repetitions, or a larger group size. Maybe instead of a group of 2, they are in a group of 6, and see if they are still able to do that, and then continue to monitor their progress. If you are, a lot of times, the only time you'd want to immediately take off and remove all supports would be if they have been up there for a little while, or you think that they had a false low, or they were just kind of barely needing a little bit of help, and now they're consistently showing that they're fine. So when you think about those scores and coming off of an IPRI or that intervention need, that really ultimately falls to the decision of the district and the team working with that student. But do consider that if you've got a student, it's kind of like when you have a student that was in had on leg braces and was using crutches, and all of us, they're able to really work well and go pretty well with those crutches. You don't say, okay, well, you can walk fine, let's take away your crutches. They still need some of those supports. So what you might want to do is say, okay, can we step it down a little bit and see if they can still maintain this level of where we want it to be. Okay, so just some things to think about with that. Gail, okay, I'm going to read. So RSA will be home for the dyslexia screening and probably reporting. Everything else will be under special ed. What was the everything else? The everything else would be maintaining the dyslexia handbook. If we have a student that needs a full educational evaluation that's moving in, potentially moving to special education, obviously that's going to fall under SPED's purview. And then they are maintaining the requirement for any dyslexia awareness professional development, okay? And then you are correct, the 10% professional development of RSA funds does not start until next year, okay? All right, and then I see one more question that was just to me, but I'm still going to address it here. If a student scores at or above benchmark on the middle of year test, and the teacher and interventionist agree that the student would do well staying in the classroom, what if any paperwork needs to happen now? At that point, you're just saying on the IPRI that they have met their goal, because they have, and that you're adjusting that intervention plan to take them off. You'll want to let the parent know, probably, because they're going to figure that out, especially if they think they're getting some support and all of a sudden they find out they're not. So I would just let them know that you're adjusting the intervention plan. They seem to be doing fine with just tier 1 or core instruction, and that as always, we would make adjustments if you feel that that's necessary. Okay, but no, you don't need to turn anything else in. All you'll do is on your end of year report, remember we have those students that have met their goal, they're now reading on grade level, they would be included in that count, which is a great thing to celebrate. We like those kinds of things. So okay, I promised you a shorter meeting today because I know we are all swamped with everything. I don't see any other things on the chat I need to address, but anyone is welcome to unmute and yell at me if you do think that there's something I've missed, or if you just have something that you want to ask about. No? All right, not a problem. Then our next meeting we will have in January. It'll be a brand new year. I've already put the wrong date on there. It's not going to be 2002. It'll be 2022. We will meet at 2 o'clock, same time, same channel. And I hope everyone has a wonderful, relaxing holiday. Catherine, I don't know if that's just a virtual background or your home, but I love it. So it looks like a winter wonderland in your house or on your virtual background. So, but everyone have a wonderful time. Enjoy your family. I hope everybody is able to rest and relax and just refresh. We'll come back in January. Thank you.
Melissa?
Yes.
Did you happen to see Connie Wilson's? That's a great question. I had that too. Wondering when the dyslexia guidance might be coming out. Is there a time frame?
We will have it out this spring. Getting more specific than that gets a little edgy because it will have to go through the work group, and then it'll have to go through our leadership and then through communications. And none of that, it's all like pushing a ball uphill. The intention is that we want this out to districts by March. That's our hope to do, so that you have some time to do some planning. I would like to get it out sooner. I just know that realistically it might not. Yeah, it's as soon as we, and even if we have to send it out into some phases, so we can get out some, here's some to start with and get more, we can always do that too, just to make sure it's getting to you as quickly as possible. But yeah, I know we're needing that yesterday, and that time is always fun. So, and Jenny, I am going to give you a call once we hang up on this call, I promise. All right, everybody have a great holiday. Stop that, and we will see you soon. Bye.